What does it feel like to be a sentry? A centurion, I guess, is what they don't. Isn't that what they call them?
Centurion, yeah.
Centurion, yeah.
Well, deep subject.
Well, what I wanted to talk to you about is,
It's a good feeling.
okay.
Never expected to make it. Didn't think much about making it. I'm just very fortunate
Wow.
to have. You don't ever do anything by yourself. You always have help. And I've always been blessed of having good friends and everything to celebrate with me my good fortune.
And you were a part of probably one of the biggest periods in history.
Yeah, I guess we were.
70 years ago. What do you remember about, well, 75 years ago, actually. What do you remember about your service?
Well, I guess I remember quite a bit of it.
Well, good. What's bubbling up to your mind right now?
Well, I guess you remember the good times and the bad times.
Now tell me, what did you do? What were you?
I was a pilot of Avenger.
And what is an Avenger?
Avenger is a torpedo bomber. If it's a TBM, it's built by General Motors. If it's TBF, it's built by Grumman.
What was it like to fly?
Well, it was the largest aircraft in the Navy flown by stick, landing aboard the carrier. But it's 17,500 pounds loaded.
So it was the biggest aircraft landed on a carrier at that time.
Yes.
Wow. You had to wrestle that thing. What was it like? How did it fly?
Well, thank goodness it was easy.
That's a great answer. Great answer. But how did you become a pilot?
Well, after December the 7th, I decided I'd just join up because I knew I would end up in the service anyway. And I was sent down to Atlanta, Georgia. And they chose me to go in since I'd had 2 years of junior college. They signed me to the aircraft part of it. So I ended up of being put in the flight training. And as I said, I've said before, I soloed on April 1st. And I fooled everybody, including myself.
That's good. Well, what was it like? I mean, what was it like to be up there? I mean, because, planes, they hadn't been around that long, to tell you the truth.
No, I know that. No, I was just you just keep learning something different all the time. And the most important thing is having the fella upstairs being on your side. Makes a big difference.
Well, was an incident that kind of proved that the fella was on your side. And I think you know what I'm talking about.
Well, I guess that would be on my second strike. My first encounter with the Japs was off the U.S. Being flying off the Yorktown, going under, flying into a target at 8 o'clock. I had 2 strikes that day, 8 o'clock strike and a 1 o'clock strike. First strike I was on was after a Japanese destroyer, and I guess you show how green and everything I was. I made a pass at a Japanese destroyer, and I was going to say that I pressed my button for 400 pounds. I was carrying 400-pound bombs. So we could carry a ton, and that's what we did. We did all the main load. Of most of the time, it was 400 or 500-pound bombs. But no, I was talking about them going to. First, I went after the Japanese destroyer, and again, I'm on the next strike. It was against Japanese cargo ship, about a 400-footer long. And my crewman, I had a radioman, and I had a turret gunner. So we were a 3-man crew. Of course, I did all they couldn't get to me. I was up in the cockpit, but there's so much stuff in between the bilge and the torpedoes plane. And lost my chain of thought.
You were telling us about the second strike on the cargo ship, the Japanese
Yeah,
cargo
that's.
ship, and how you were up front and the other people were
Yeah,
in the back.
I drove on this. We came in what's known as glide bombing, 45-degree angle. We usually came in about 10,000 feet and come in and drop the bomb. My crewman said that we've got about 2 to 3 hits, 500-pound bomb hits on that cargo ship. And later on, I saw in the book that somebody had written up, stories on some of the strikes and everything. That the ship that I had put 2 to 3 foot, I got credit for sinking it. Well, lo and behold, when I don't know exactly when it was, but anyway, it shows that when the ship was sunk, the merchant ship was sunk, it was also, it was landed on top of a Japanese sub. So I got 2, that's 2 for 1.
Wow. I mean, who has a story like that?
I
Two
know.
for who has a story like that? Man, you got credit for 2 for 1. That's wow. That's amazing. Well, I was looking over through your pictures over there, and there was one picture of a pretty tore up wing. There, you remember that story?
Yes. That was happening over Guam when we had just equipped our planes with rockets. We called them Buck Rogers. And on this particular strike that day, we had to, in other words, we had to make 2 strikes. We'd go in with drop you 400 or 500 pound bombs, then come back then, since you were, and made a pass at gun emplacements with 8 rockets. Well, on my way down on the dive at the gun emplacement, they were putting tracers past the cockpit. So, this is where David was talking about. I put this plane in what's known as a skid. It means it looks like you're flying straight, but actually your path is like that. You go either skid left or the right. And so I just skidded that right out of the way. But the hole in the wing there was knocked in there on that strike. I mean, when it hit the rocket in the wing, and I couldn't get rid of it. And I had to come aboard the ship with that rocket hanging loose and everything. You can imagine a 5-inch rocket hanging loose up under the wing of your plane. And anyway, I came in, and the only thing on the flight deck was a landing signal officer. The landing signal officer, you wonder about the one that gives the signals, at the back of the ship. Well, it gives you the cut where they come in and land. So, anyway, landed without any trouble whatsoever. The rocket did not fall off.
Well, you got a special assignment after that, didn't you?
Well, I don't know what you mean there.
Well, your son was telling me that the captain of the ship came and said, "You're my pilot."
Not quite.
No, he told on you.
He said somebody upstairs was with you. You're going to fly me when I go meet some other folks from other ships in command. You did do some flying, taking you to other places. Because he said somebody upstairs is looking after you, so you're flying. Remember that, Skipper? Forgotten that?
Yeah, I'm afraid so.
That's what I thought.
Well, I saw another picture over there where you had 13,000 landings on an aircraft carrier. Is that like an exclusive club? I mean, is that, when you get to that number, is that
Every 1,000th landing aboard the Yorktown was celebrated with shaking hands with the captain and the ship's bakery with a cake with 13,000 landing aboard to denote to note what thousands landing it was. Now this was in, I think, around the 9th of July of 1944 when this happened.
There wasn't too many guys that had that many landings, was there?
Well, no, I just have, that's the 13,000 landing aboard the Yorktown. By any plane could have been.
Oh, now I get it.
Are you with me now?
Now I got you. So you just happen to be the millionth customer.
I happen to be the 13,000th. I had to take a wave off. A wave off means it wouldn't let you land and they'd go back around. And I forgot what it was. I think it was, I accused one of the pilots of making an army landing, stretching it out. Of course, I wasn't very welcome around.
Absolutely. Were there any times that you actually met the Japanese in the air?
I was very fortunate. No. I saw some, but I didn't meet them in the air.
That was probably a very good thing.
Do what?
That was a good thing, wasn't it?
It was a good thing.
Well, tell me a little bit about the ship, the Yorktown. I mean, because that thing is just, back then it must have been like a modern marvel, a
Well,
floating city.
Well, Yorktown, I think some of the official stats on it is that she was 870 feet long, weighed 29,000 tons. And let's trying to
How many people are on it?
do what?
Did you say there were 3,500 people on it?
There were about 3,500 people aboard the ship itself. That was the ship's company and all that. The air group you trained aboard on land to be able to go on, to get aboard the ship there. And our group consisted of fighters, dive bombers, torpedo planes, or torpedo bombers, torpedoes or bombs. And I'm having trouble remembering a lot now.
Oh, that's okay. I understand. I mean, you are 100.
I am 100, huh? Touche.
Was there any other stories that you remember? I mean, I remember my grandfather used to tell me stories about seeing the first rocket and all this kind of stuff when he was in Germany. What else do you remember?
I don't think I was ever involved in anything like that. Of course, you've always heard of the June 19th, where the Japanese fleet, and engaged the American fleet. And I think that's one of the days that 380 aircraft, or 80 some aircraft, shot down. One day, fleet engagement.
Were you in the air that day?
Well, what they did, they were off of the Philippines, and we were on the, I guess that would be the west side. We were between Guam and the Philippines. Well, so they were, the Japanese fleet was on the side of the ship, I mean, of the, it's on the west side, east side of the Philippines. It was between the Philippines and Guam, while we were between Guam and the Philippines. We were both in the same sector.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to say.
Was there ever any close calls on the ship that you remember being, I know they started doing the kamikaze pilots at the end of the war and stuff like that?
As did what?
The kamikaze pilots at the end of the war?
No, I wasn't out there then.
Okay,
I was on Maui, stationed on Maui.
okay. Oh, Hawaii, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I was, first time I went to the Hawaiian Islands, went to Hilo, Hawaii. And that was in August 43. And we ended up being up to Keneoe. Which is over from Pearl Harbor there. And that's where the air group had an air group that was trained there. They said that was a shipping point for filling for the next available carrier to come in. If you happened to be training in Keneoe at that time, then that was your ship then. And we got assigned to Yorktown. So I got my first combat experience was on the Yorktown as a replacement pilot.
Now, didn't the Yorktown, it was very close to being sunk at one time, didn't it?
The original Yorktown, CV5, see this CV10.
Ah,
See, this was a CV5 was a group of 4 carriers, and they called it the Yorktown group there because CV5 was a Yorktown. CV6 was Lexington, CV7 was the Wasp, CV8 was the Hornet. And you see, the Hornet was involved in the Doolittle strike with the 85, you know, with the B-25s, you know, against Japan over there.
so you got to go into the New Yorktown.
I got the new, thank goodness.
With everything being so brand new and stuff like that, what does, you know, a kid from Rutherfordton think about being on a ship like that?
Well, You know, back in those days, there weren't many cars either. And the thing about it, I learned to fly before I learned to drive.
That's the funniest part of all. Wow.
That's amazing.
Well, but the thing about it, the only reason I didn't drive because I never had the opportunity as I was growing up. That was back in the days when you could get a scholarship at college for a year, $50.
Oh my goodness. $50.
$50 you do. That'd blow your mind.
Yeah, well, yeah. That is for sure. Well, I was just wondering if there was anything else you remembered about your service that you wanted to tell me about.
Well, on this, I don't care who you are, if you're a pilot, you're going to have a lot of different things that happen to you. Some's going to be good, some's going to be bad. And then remember one thing, as long as the fella upstairs is looking after you, you're in great hands.
Well said. I don't think I could have said it any better than that myself. That is for sure.
My name is David.
David.
I'm the oldest son. I'm the last survivor. Everybody else is passed. So it's just Dad and I. He's 100 and I'm 74.
My goodness. I mean, what's it like being around, so your brothers and sisters, do you have brothers and sisters?
My sister passed away a year and a half ago. She lived in South Africa for 45 years, and my brother passed away a year before she did. Both of them basically on their 70th birthday, almost on the day.
Wow.
So
But Dad's still around, huh?
Dad's doing well and still wishing he were out more active.
Bet.
All these people you saw today were taking him places to swim, to play bridge, to go to Kiwanis, church, golf. I took him when he was 90 to Houston for the Nationals. He was supposed to go at 95, and my brother got sick, and so he didn't make it.
I know what I wanted to ask you. Is,
Sure.
I know growing up with my grandfather, a World War II veteran in the house, he used to regale me with all kinds of stories.
Oh, yeah.
What is one that sticks out in your mind?
Well, this is a funny one. On the Yorktown, you know, most of these guys don't like to talk about it. I would ask him as a child, what was it like bombing, know that you might have killed people? He said, I never thought about it. And then he said, but I will tell you one thing. He said, to pass the day, he said we would let the hangar down and play volleyball. That's something you don't ever think about on a ship. I mean, that's the neat stuff, you know, like that. And when he in truck, when he went over with, he was with Squadron 1, Torpedo 1, but they put him in on 5 for 2 strikes at truck, and he got his rocket launcher shot, so he had to land with this rocket hanging down, so they cleared the flight deck, and he made it in and didn't blow it up, so the captain came out when he was back at 1 and said, you're flying me everywhere. Somebody up there is with you. Isn't that neat?
Well, yeah, especially now since you're not.
That's right.
I think it's been proven, hasn't it?
I think you're right.
Well, I saw some other pictures of the captain too. They had like 13,000
1,000.
landings.
He made the 13,000th landing on the Yorktown and got a cake. Not as pretty as the one he got today.
But I mean, it must be amazing to kind of grow up. I mean, I'm sure you guys have been back to the Yorktown.
Yes.
I mean, because it's just down in Charles.
He won the first, they had the first golf tournament there, 45 knot crossing winds. Daddy won it. Got a silver cup, and he said it was like landing on the Yorktown because that thing was doing that, and he was landing into a crosswind sometimes, and at 45 knots, he said it was tough. That ship was rolling.
I bet it was.
It's rolling.
I'm sure they make a big fuss every time he comes down there, don't they?
Oh yeah, they do. He hasn't been in a few years, just age and whatnot. He just said that, but he went for a long time, and they had a lot of fun. I mean, it was fun. A lot of families got together and enjoyed it. And we're thankful. A lot of reminiscing. A lot of Thanksgiving. You know, we just don't have a clue. We wouldn't all be here like we are if it wasn't for people. The whole country pulled together. Everybody in this country pulled together back then.
Yeah, because I mean,
Everybody.
my grandfather, both of my great uncles, and my aunt, they were all involved in the war effort.
That's right. Everybody, no matter where you were pulling. You were doing something positive for this.
Absolutely.
So I mean, that's probably as good as it gets. You know.
Now, where is Truck? Is that in the?
That's out. Well, that's in the Pacific,
Okay.
and he stayed around that area some, and then he was up in. Gosh, I'm trying to think. He spent a lot of time. He was in Chichijima. Matter of fact, where our president was shot down, he was flying 2 missions on July 4th, almost exactly 2 months before our president, Herbert Walker Bush, was shot down in the same area, and he said there was a lot of fire. It was a tough spot.
I bet.
Tough spot. So
Does he get a lot of folks, calling him up and asking him for interviews?
he's been interviewed by people from France. He had a table up when they opened the War Memorial in D.C., and he had a table where he met people and explained things. He explains it a lot better than I. Even to this point, right now, he knows things that you and I have no clue. He remembers all the classes of the carriers, etc. It's just amazing, really.
What's it like to be the son of a hero?
You want to cry? I'm so thankful for him. And the people love him, and he loves them. And he's just been a good man. And you know what? He always encouraged me and the others, but he never told us what to do. He never forced his way on us. He just encouraged us. You're going to college. You're going to do this. You're going to do right. And we went in and out of that church building it was great. Great fellowship, great learning, great church. But the main thing was he let us find our own way. All 3 of us found our own way.
Definitely a member of the greatest generation.
Yes, absolutely, and loved it. And you saw some of his buddies today. Remember the one that showed up was 99. 99 is always. They've been joking about that for years at Kiwanis. I think he's got like 39 or 43 years of perfect attendance at Kiwanis. You know.
Yeah, that's what they did. I mean, my grandfather was a fire chief, at the
Wow.
volunteer fire department,
There you go.
When they came out of the service, they kept serving.
Well, that's it. It really is all about that, and he loves it. He loves. I mean, as soon as he retired, I called him. He's retired at 65. He was training people at the mill, and when he quit, they shut the mill down here. So about a year later, I said, "How you doing, Dad? How's retirement? Isn't that fun?" He said, "I'm retired." He was. Yeah, I always remembered that. I thought that was neat.